We now know more about a new feasibility study for the Northeast Dubois School Corporation. More on that, plus funding remains a hot-button issue for the proposed Jasper Cultural Center, and Tara Hope and Sarah Betts preview this weekend's Schnellville Sesquicentennial celebration tonight on Inform. All of that and much more is up next here on the 18 WJTS News. Hello, I'm Bradford Raths. We begin with Indiana State Police arresting 2 Kentucky men on meth and weapons charges after a traffic stop along Interstate 64 in Crawford County. ISP says just before 8:20 yesterday morning, a Crawford County Sheriff's deputy was conducting radar patrol near the 86-mile marker of I-64 when he noticed a white 2014 Mazda going east at 80 miles an hour in a 70-mile-per-hour speed zone. After pulling the Mazda over, the deputy spoke with the driver, 30-year-old Jeremiah Collins of Owensboro, and a passenger, 24-year-old Christopher Rayleigh of Greenville, Kentucky. As he continued his investigation, the deputy found that Collins and Rayleigh both had suspended driver's licenses, and their car was actually a rental car that they weren't allowed to drive under the rental agreement. After the car rental company asked for the vehicle to be impounded, the deputy began searching the vehicle. He found a plastic baggie with a white powdery substance which tested positive for methamphetamine, along with a handgun. Neither Collins or Rayleigh had a handgun permit. Collins and Rayleigh were both taken into custody and booked into the Crawford County Jail. They each face level 6 felonies for possession of methamphetamine and Class A misdemeanors for possession of a handgun without a permit. More definitive plans have been laid out for a feasibility study in the Northeast Dubois School Corporation. Last night, the Northeast Dubois School Board approved a timeline for the study. This study gets underway Wednesday, September 30th, with Bruce Hatton and other officials from study leader administrator assistants taking tours of each of the school buildings. This process will include student and community interviews along with a pair of community forums. The student interviews will take place on Tuesday, October 6th, with community interviews to be held the following morning. Now, the first community forum will take place the night of October 6th at Celestine Elementary. The second community forum will be held the following Tuesday, October 13th at Dubois Middle School. Both community hearings are set to begin at 6:30 p.m. and, of course, are open to the public. Northeast Dubois Superintendent Bill Hoaksong remains hopeful that the study will bring fresh ideas to the district in the wake of its financial struggles.
We feel like we've been cutting forever, and what's happening is we're closing the deficit. We're not there. To give you an idea, 3 years ago when I started that first year, we were in deficit financing by about $630,000. Projected for this coming year, we're going to be about $270,000. So we've made great progress, but it's still not enough, and I don't know. We're just running out of ideas.
The study as a whole is expected to cost around $20,000 to complete. School officials are hoping to have the study done by late December, with findings to be made public at the board's January meeting. Of course, the study is being done to help the Northeast Dubois District navigate through its ongoing financial turmoil. The district is working with a general fund that is being funded at the same level as it was back in 2008 when the Great Recession began. The district's advertised 2016 budget is just over $10.75 million. A bit more than $6.5 million of that comes from the general fund. Monday night's vote was just the beginning for getting the Jasper Cultural Center effort off and running. City and library officials will now turn their attention to coming up with the funds for the roughly $12.6 million project. Jasper Mayor Terry Seitz says though the city will come up with some of the money for the Arts Commission's portion of the cost, they won't be able to cover all of it.
The Arts also knows it won't be 100%. There's going to need to be a capital campaign as well. And that's something that they'll share with the council in more detail. But ultimately, I think it's very preliminary. Next week's council meeting, I suspect there won't be a decision, but there'll be an understanding of where the library would love to have the council be.
Seitz says in addition to city edit funds, officials could look at bonding and reserve money to help fund their roughly $6.3 million portion of the project. He says the goal is to come up with the money while keeping taxes low and other city services in top shape.
Bottom line, for the city perspective, we will not want to use any property tax revenue, so no tax increases, but to use our economic development income tax where ultimately it should be used. And along with that, We're starting with a base that still allows us to use our economic development taxes for our streets and roads. We're not touching any of that. We're going to start at a high zero base. So if we get $1.5 million every year, we may start with half of that, for example, and not even touch it, and just keep it going.
The Jasper Arts Commission is expected to go before the Jasper City Council at their regular meeting next Wednesday to begin that discussion. Of course, the library would get a large amount of its funding share from a referendum should that pass in the fall of 2016. Library officials say they will now work to sell the public on the Jasper Cultural Campus idea between now and next fall. Now, there is a verbal agreement in place between the Jasper Library Board and Hoosier Desk owners Ken and Paul Sternberg for the purchase of the site. The purchase price would be $864,000, but that drops down to around $614,000 thanks to Dino tax credits that can be applied to the purchase price. The Library Board and Arts Commission are each paying half of the final purchase price. And finally tonight, details have been announced for this year's Jasper Chamber of Commerce annual meeting. The 62nd edition of that meeting takes place Thursday, October 15th at Clubhouse 61. The luncheon begins at 11:30 that morning with presentations and a keynote speech to follow. Of course, the luncheon will once again feature the presentation of the annual President's Community Excellence Award. This award is given each year to an individual in the community who has given of him or herself in a variety of ways in order to make a difference. This year's keynote speaker is Kyle Bennett, who is president and CEO of Jasper's Memorial Hospital and Healthcare Center. Bennett began at Memorial back in 1997 as Vice President of Finance. He was named as Chief Operating Officer back in 2013 and took over as President and Chief Executive Officer this past April following the retirement of Ray Snowden. Bennett's topic will be Healthcare Closer to You. Tickets for the annual chamber meeting are priced at $30 each, or tables of 8 are available for $220. Reservations can be made by calling the chamber office at 482-6866 or by emailing the Jasper Chamber at chamber@jasperin.org. The deadline for your reservations will be Friday, October the 9th. All right, coming up after the break, your local forecast and a preview of the Schnellville Sesquicentennial celebration. We're back after this.